The key understanding that you need to have is for something to manifest in physical reality, it needs to go from concept, or it needs to go from intention, it needs to go from abstract to something that is tangible and understandable. You want to think about it like the caterpillar going into the cocoon and coming out a butterfly. The dissolving of your identities, the dissolving of old patterns and old ways of being, and that healing process that you go through is going to be a challenging and confronting thing. Everything is on the line. Everything is at stake in terms of your entire identity, who you were before and who you are stepping into. But the true process of transforming and changing a frequency and bringing that frequency through into physical reality is going to take you time. Until you are like, this is not meeting my needs and I'm willing to surrender it up and see what's next, that's when that new inspiration can come in. That's when you can make that frequency shift, but not before. Welcome back. Today we're going to talk about quantum leaping or timeline shifting. And I want to bring this concept from maybe what is seen or perceived as abstract spiritual language and bring it more into tangible reality. That is also always my goal here, is to bridge spiritual teachings that might seem a little bit out of reach or a little hard to grasp. And of course, there's plenty in the quantum field, and there's so much in that realm and that world that is far beyond my comprehension. But what we're going to talk about today is what it actually looks like, feels like, what the experience can be to transform your reality and quantum leap or quantum shift or timeline shift, and what that actually means for your physical reality, what that process actually looks like. And because what I often see and what can get lost a little bit is that the talk of frequency, the talk of energy, the talk of becoming a vibrational match, all of these things can stay, as I said, abstract, or it can stay conceptual. And the key understanding that you need to have is for something to manifest in physical reality, it needs to go from concept, or it needs to go from intention, it needs to go from abstract to something that is tangible and understandable. So the more information and the more guidance I can give you around what these processes can look and feel like as you move through them, the easier it's going to be for you to take that from an abstract concept and a conceptual concept or an intention and actually understand the process of bringing it through to physical reality and actually completely transforming your embodiment, transforming your patterns, transforming the reality in which you live, and also show you where some of it is really challenging process. We want to think about it like the caterpillar going into the cocoon and coming out a butterfly. The dissolving of your identities, the dissolving of old patterns and old ways of being, and that healing process that you go through is going to be a very, very challenging and confronting thing. So this idea of just setting intentions and setting beliefs is incredibly, incredibly important. But I sometimes think if we don't have enough understanding, it'll discount the actual process of that death and rebirth process and transformation that you're going to go through. So what I need you to understand, which you might already, is that anything that comes through as a transformation or anything that manifests as a transformation in physical reality begins as inspiration, or it begins as intention. It begins on the subtle body level. So as much as you want, you can focus on a frequency, you can meditate on a frequency, you can set an intention. But the process of actually bringing an intention or a creative spark or inspiration or a certain frequency and being able to then hold that in physical reality is a very different and longer process of transformation. So that is going to be somatic, it's relational, it's going to be healing things that you're experiencing in physical reality, things that are happening in your body, issues, health issues, imbalances, signs of disease, all of that that's manifesting currently in physical reality. As you are changing that reality, you are changing those symptoms. So that's not just by raising your vibration, yes, but then there's a process of confronting those ailments. There's a process of confronting the mental ailments, the emotional ailments, the physical ailments, and that's what I really want to go into today. So this process of quantum leaping, this process of timeline shifting, it is behavioral, it's physical, it's relational, it is energetic, it's all of those things. And a leap in and of itself isn't just a mindset shift. You can have, and we are having, you can have small leaps and small shifts every single day, or in any moment, any given moment that you just choose to operate differently, think differently, behave differently. Once you are done with a certain pattern, you are done with a certain cycle, you are done, you've seen the pain of it, you've seen the outcome of it enough times that you're like, I'm not going to do this anymore. Once you feel done with a certain timeline, a certain pattern, that is when you are finding completion. And that's when you tend to see the shift really happen. And that's because you are feeling completion, you are feeling done with an old pattern. And there's a reality of what happens when what happens before before we're actually done with something. And like I was saying, just as I was saying, to manifest something new, the new version of you, the transformed version of you, the butterfly that comes out of the cocoon, to transform that and bring that into physical reality, you have to set and carry through an intention and build that strongly enough that it manifests physically. And you have to be able to see the results of your actions and all of those things. Same with when you are completing a pattern. And this is one of the main things that I see and I work with clients. And it's a difference between whether they're ready for transformation or they're not. And it's, have they seen the repercussions and the outcome of their current thoughts, behaviors, beliefs, their current frequency? Have they seen the result of that enough? And has it become obvious enough to them? And has it become painful enough to them or undesirable enough to them that they are now done? They're exhausted with it. They're depleted by it. They are repulsed by it. They feel embarrassed about it. All of those things that come with feeling done, just feeling nauseated over a certain process. This is a very important piece to understand in terms of taking these leaps and taking these shifts. You have to manifest enough of what you don't want in order to be confronted by it, in order to see it enough for it to be tangible enough to you to make that change. And some people feel shame around this, and we do. There's a certain part of the process that's included in that we're like, how did I get here? But it has to manifest in physical reality so that you can see it in this physical body. You manifested yourself into this physical reality with these senses so that you go through this process. And so to do that, you need to bring forth old patterns or old beliefs or old behavioral systems. You have to bring those through so that all of your senses can then be engaged with it and you can see it. And you can see it enough that it's strong enough that you go, okay, I'm done with this. This isn't working anymore. And that's when we start to see that shift. So that can manifest in relational patterns. It manifests in health issues, manifests in just our energy body and how we feel in ourselves. It'll manifest in financial situations. So we're both going to create the things that we don't want strongly enough so we can actually see it, feel it, touch it, experience it in order to transform it. And then you're going to do the same thing, but with a different intention. So you're going to experience enough of what you don't want before you can actually start to make that shift and make that leap. And that's the point where a new intention becomes viable. A new reality becomes viable because the old one has run out. And so this is why it's important to know that these leaps and these changes, there's a divine kind of process to them. There is your own unique, I guess, flavor of them, of what you kind of need to experience, of the pattern in order for you to feel somewhat complete with it. And when I say you feel complete, and then, there's a new way or this new leap or this new reality that you're stepping into, you don't know what that is. So there's a process of being done. There's a process of kind of exhaling out the old. It's like you might just kind of drop your shoulders and go, I'm done with that. Like it's enough. There's a sense of enoughness being done where there's an unknown as to what comes in its place. But where there's that spaciousness, that unknown, that mystery, that's when a new intention can drop in. And that's a really, really powerful point, because that is where you plant the seeds for what's going to manifest to come. And you're going to go through these cycles every day. You go through those cycles with every single breath. You take the breath and then you exhale and you're done with that breath, that round of breath. For women, you've got your monthly cycle where you are done with a certain pattern. As you come into your bleed, you are letting go and you are releasing. Every day is a cycle. Every year is a cycle. So we're going through all of those cycles continuously. And we're going through these seasons and we're shedding and we're releasing. You go through emotional cycles as well. So you're always getting this opportunity to let go and begin again. So really, you're getting these opportunities to shift, to make these shifts at both a subtle level and at a grander level, a more obvious level, in every single moment. So this idea of quantum leaping or timeline shifting can feel like really exciting in terms of I can create this reality that I desire. But where a lot of people fall off is in that process of going in as the caterpillar and coming out as the butterfly. You have to go in and confront the shadowy parts. You have to go in and alchemize everything that was behaving and operating in a certain way and transform it into something that's actually going to work with the new version of you that's coming through. And the biggest thing that I see in this and what I've went through for myself is the amount of physical discomfort, physical pain, physical tension, the physical manifestations of shadow, the physical manifestations of disease, the physical manifestations of these patterns that have kept us small, shrunken, shut down, fractured from ourselves. And as we awaken this energy within us and as we go through that process, our physical body has to learn a new scaffolding. It has to learn a new way of holding and channeling that energy. And if that was a super simple process and you would have done it already. Yes, it is the most natural way to do things, but it's going to go against most of the systems and structures that we have in place. So in order to fit into normal everyday things that perhaps maybe were aligned with the old version of you, you had to contort your body into certain shapes. You had to restrict the flow of energy in your body in certain ways. And now you're saying, hey, energy, I want you to expand. I want you to flow freely. I want you to express freely. So now you've got to create a different container for that energy to move through. And that is where we start to resolve chronic tension. We start to really look at the nervous system and how dysregulated a person is. We start to look at the physical capabilities of the system in terms of like how strong your tissues are, how much capacity you have for breath, like how much restriction there is in the diaphragm, in the muscles, in the tissues, how much tension there is, what's happening with just the way that your body is orienting and organizing itself around your lived experience and around this energy that's moving through you. So that process isn't going to feel light and elevated. It's also going to feel really messy. It's going to feel like grief. It's going to feel like exhaustion and depletion. There's going to be a lot of that as you let go of old ways and build new ones. You're going to confront a lot of depletion, a lot of exhaustion, to the point that you're going to obviously be questioning your body and questioning the healing process and questioning the transformation process, especially where there is unresolved traumas and things like this living in the body. So if you have been in hypervigilance or survival for a really, really, really long time, perhaps this whole lifetime, and you're also carrying many generations of that same pattern that have come before you, you can imagine, if you've been in survival that long, how much rest, how much ease, how much relaxation, how much receptivity, how much comfort has not been accessible. So the amount that you'll need to rest that's going to feel unnatural, the amount that you're actually going to want to enjoy your life and do things that feel aligned and pleasurable and inspiring is going to feel unusual. The amount that you're going to have to feel anger that was repressed is going to feel unusual. The amount you're going to have to tap into unfelt grief that you were never supported in is going to feel really unfamiliar and really unusual. And this is where it becomes this, when we go into the body, transforming and changing your reality and your patterns from a lower vibrational state to a higher vibrational state starts to become really real. And that's where a lot of people are just like, this is too hard. And I like this as a concept, as an idea, but the actual process of walking through it, that's just, that feels a bit too much, or it involves a bit too much courage or willingness to kind of walk against the grain or do something differently. And I'm just not ready for that, or I'm not ready for that right now, or, that's inner work that I wasn't prepared for. So know that this isn't instant. We can have micro and subtle shifts, and that continuously and always. But the true process of transforming and changing a frequency and bringing that frequency through into physical reality is going to take you time. It's like building anything. If you have an intention, then you want to create something. So you have the intention of something you want to create. You want to knit a jumper. That's going to take you time to bring it from the idea, and you got to plan for it. You got to go out and source the materials. Maybe you don't even know how to knit, and then you've got to learn to do that. And then the process and the time, and then the frustrations and the challenges and the setbacks that you're going to have throughout that journey. So then amplify that and imagine then you also want to create a business, and that's obviously higher stakes than knitting a jumper. Now you're talking about putting yourself out there. It's attached to finances. This is far higher stakes. There's a lot more riding on it. You think about how many challenges, how many setbacks, how much you're going to question yourself, how many of your old patterns are going to come up. It's going to continue to happen. It's going to continue to happen over and over and over again. But the point is, you're trying to take that old pattern and bring it through to something new. And then amplify that again, that you are doing that for your physical body. You're maybe doing that for every single area of your life. And you're saying, I want to heal. I want to transform my relationship patterns. Everything is on the line. Everything is at stake in terms of your entire identity, who you were before and who you are stepping into. So everything is on the table. Old relationships are on the table, old ways of being, old ways of looking at money, old ways of doing business, old ways of engaging with the world and people around us, all of it is now on the table. So when we're talking about quantum leaping at like the highest level, that is your identity shift overall. You're doing a 180 on your identity shift, or you're doing a 360 because you're resolving the whole thing and alchemizing the whole thing and bringing the true version of you to life. But how much is at stake when you do that in terms of what comes with me if I become this entire new person? What is left? And you are willing to stand at that altar of transformation and be stripped bare completely. You can understand why these terminologies can feel safer to keep them as concepts. It can feel safer and more digestible to keep it as like, I'll visualize about my dream life. And these are incredibly powerful practices. None of what I'm saying here isn't 100% part of the process. But when we're talking about the process of identity shifting, quantum leaping in terms of your physical reality and transforming that, there are physical ramifications to that. There are challenges that come along with that. And there is a cost to doing that. Obviously, the cost of staying where you are is far greater than where you're going. Like, you want to be transforming that reality, but you also have to be kind of real about what that process involves. It's not called the hero's journey. We're not labeled as courageous for doing it because it's simple and easy. And like we always say, if it was, everybody would be healed and transformed and healthy and fully expressed in themselves. So a lot of the time, we're just skipping over the body when we are talking about some of these things, or acting as if it's a miraculous and spontaneous healing. And I'm not saying that doesn't happen. But for the vast majority of people, it is a slow, alchemical process day after day that feels like a really slow burn. Like what do they say? It takes 10 years to be an overnight success. We want to get the quick snapshot. Want to get the reel on social media that shows you their 2-year transformation in a 30-second reel. And you think, oh, that's doable. And it is doable. But the pain and the struggle and the self-doubt and the challenge and how deep a person has to dig in order to identity shift, identity alchemize, and create a new reality is a huge undertaking. And if you're inside of that process at any stage, you understand what it truly means to dissolve an old reality or an old pattern set or behavior set and change that into something completely new. So the decision or the intention can absolutely happen in a moment, but the embodiment doesn't. Everybody wants radical and instant healing. But I promise you, if you're willing to just do the slow burn, those results are going to be everything and more. And they're going to be grounded, they're going to be embodied. So what I also want to say in this, if I haven't scared you away from the process entirely, is that it's not about becoming somebody that you're not. Going from the caterpillar into the butterfly, our chemical process means we're taking the version of ourselves that is true and pure and free and releasing it from its restrictions and its cages and the conditioning and releasing all of the things that are false narratives, the things that we don't want to subscribe to anymore, that we did in order to survive, but now it's time to let go of those. It's a shedding. It's a letting go. You're letting go of everything that is not you in order to become you. And this is where I think people get scared because they think, well, what's going to be left? Like when I say, stand at the altar of transformation and be willing to give up, be willing to put it all on the table to kind of see what's left. And that can be a really scary thing. And that doesn't happen. You don't just blow everything up in one go. And you are never giving up something that is a part of you. That's what you're used to doing inside of your patterns. You're used to abandoning the core essence of who you are, the core essence of your joy, of your humanity, of all of that which wants to be expressed through you. You are used to abandoning that. That's the pattern we're dissolving. So everything you're going to gain is just more of what is in alignment. But I'm not saying that your patterns and your survival mechanisms aren't going to fight tooth and nail to the death. They're going to fight you until you are so clear that it doesn't work in that way. This is what I was saying at the start. You have to see it. You have to be done with it. You have to be so clear that it's like, that is not the way. I don't know what the way is, but I'm now willing to step into the mystery, and the mystery feels less scary than repeating that again. Because now I've seen that and I am so clear. I am so clear that that is not the way. And that has to be something else, but I don't know what it is, because you're not going to step into the mystery. You're not going to make that leap. You're not going to make that timeline shift into the unknown, into a surrendered state, if you still feel like the reality that you are in is safer or somehow better, is going to meet your needs better. Until you are like, this is not meeting my needs and I'm willing to surrender it up and see what's next, that's when that new inspiration can come in. That's when you can make that frequency shift, but not before. And that is a cosmic thing. So this is when we have to understand that our mind, we can understand a lesson long before the body believes it's safe to complete it or start something new. You can understand it logically way before, or you can understand it conceptually way before you've had the lived experience enough to see it in reality. This is why we can see people playing out patterns when we're on the outside far longer than they conceptually know it's not right. But then it continues on and it continues on and it continues on, or they stay in a relationship that doesn't feel right until they feel safer shifting than they do remaining where they are. That's your pivotal moment. So we kind of spoke about how these old wounds and the old personality or old persona, their old identity lives in the body. But this is really what this episode kind of is centered around. And this is one of the things that I really want you to take away. And so when we talk about wounds and the old identity that you're shifting and letting go of, it's things like, I'm not enough, I'll be abandoned, I have to abandon myself in order to get love, like love is outside of me. There's scarcity, or I'm too much, or I'm sensitive, or I'm dysfunctional or broken in some way, or I have to be a certain way in order to stay in a relationship, or if I am honest, I'm going to be cast out or rejected. So all of these aren't just beliefs that are floating around in your mind. They're not. The body-mind connection is just, body-mind is one thing. So those things that you believe are manifesting already in your body. This is why people, when they come to the inner work, sometimes when they begin, it's like overwhelming. Of like, why did I start opening all of these boxes? Like, why did I lift the lid on this? Like, ignorance is bliss kind of thing. And it's like, well, no, because that was impacting your body anyway. That was playing out whether you were aware of it or not. That was impacting your health, your relationships, your life, your relationship with money, regardless of whether you were aware of it. Embodiment is just the process of coming into relationship with those things where you are all of a sudden like, oh, This is all that's happening there. It's not just happening because you're aware of it. It was happening long before, and it's just like, did it get loud enough for you to pay attention? So these are manifesting, and over time they become the embodied norm. So whatever your embodied norm is in terms of health, the tension in your body, the stress in your body, the dysregulation in your body, the way you breathe, all of those things, that is how the identity manifests in physical realities. So, for instance, like an abandonment wound is going to tighten in your chest, in your diaphragm. It's going to create adrenaline spikes. It's going to dysregulate your nervous system, create chronic stress. That's going to add to tension in the body. It's going to create an inability to settle inside of your environment. It's going to create overextending, so over-explaining, over-communicating, or just over-functioning to maintain a connection, or an over-giving, like an over-accommodating. And it's also going to create a body that can't kind of rest inside of the unknown. It can't rest inside of that suspension and that surrendered state. And things like betrayal and broken trust are going to create hypervigilance. They're going to create tension in your jaw, difficulty relaxing inside of your relationships, the hypervigilance, the scanning, like we said, you're going to be bracing in your body, all things like this. So the way these wounds manifest in the body isn't just as a belief system, it is as physical manifestations. And this is why we can shift it with intention. But depending how deep these ailments or patterns run, if they've been there for decades or generations and you're the generational curse breaker in that way, and you are shifting these patterns for an entire lineage, then the amount of repetition it's going to require for you to continue to strengthen that belief and that intention enough to bring it through to physical reality might take you a while. So you're not behind. The work you are doing is what nobody has done before you. And you're sitting here trying to do this in your physical body, trying to change these patterns, trying to heal, doing something that no woman you've ever seen in your lineage has been able to do in terms of expressing her truth, managing her finances, bringing her medicine through to the world, regulating her nervous system. Not only do you have that opportunity right now, but you're also doing this massively courageous thing, and this massive thing that takes a ton of repetition. Those physical manifestations didn't get there by one spontaneous belief alone. They got there through repeating that belief continuously in your subconscious mind over and over and over again for decades or generations. It doesn't mean it's going to take you decades or generations to unwind it, but it's going to take you continual effort over years, depending what the particular thing is that's going on in your body or in your mind, in your emotions, all of those things. It's going to take you months, years of repetition of just believing that it's possible and then putting that into action. So it's really important to understand that when someone genuinely begins shifting, especially when it's out of really long-term held patterns, the body responds. And it's going to show up, like we said, as tiredness, fatigue, big waves of emotion that we haven't experienced before, maybe irritability, maybe changes in sleep. We process a lot through our subconscious through sleep. So sleep can get disrupted, digestive changes, confronting body tension, or the body tension becoming a lot more noticeable because it was just shut out of our conscious awareness for a while. We can feel inflamed or puffy, overwhelmed, experience headaches. We can feel kind of lost and disoriented. We can feel like we want to withdraw from people, and we can start to feel like we're really edgy or not feeling settled or not feeling calm. And all of this can feel like somewhat of a spiritual kind of purging in more extreme cases for people, and for a lot of people, especially with the mental chatter and the emotional surges and stuff. It can feel like a kind of spiritual, like psychosis, that we're going through this big purging. And it's all of this content that we didn't have the awareness around kind of coming up for us to witness. And so, are we saying that every single physical manifestation is spiritual in some way? Absolutely. Absolutely. It's spiritual in some way, but not absolutely everything you're going to be experiencing is part of that process. But there are, things that you're really going to have to be aware of that we've spoken about in terms of the fatigue, the emotions, the tension in the body, confronting inflammation and things like that are going to be a part of that healing process. Things that are naturally a part of the way our body communicates with us that helps us heal. Like, it helps us heal through tension in terms of like setting boundaries and contracting away from things, and also just contracting in terms of when we're not in an outward expression, we're contracting away from the world. It's part of our boundaries. It's a part of our like withdrawal period, or just coming to the self. There is a natural contraction that we do, and a natural like tensing versus, opening that we do. The inflammation is part of our healing, and it's often very overridden in our culture. The fatigue is something that it was just normal. It's just normal that we needed to rest more and we were disconnected. So these are things that can feel really destabilizing because we've normalized overriding them. So as they come to the surface to be met, our mantra in all of this, and this doesn't discount, having the right support in the process, but the mantra has to be, in order to go through this, to trust the body, and that the body is always communicating truthfully, but it's how we interpret that communication that really determines the actions we take. And that's going to be really what determines your capacity or your journey in dissolving an old identity, dissolving old patterns, and building and creating new ones. So the last thing I kind of want to speak about, just to close this out, is healing and timeline shifting, quantum leaping through the landscape of the body. This can feel a lot harder before it feels better. And I always want to bring love and softness and compassion to that process in every single teaching that I bring, because that was really what I needed. So much of the reminder that I needed at the time. And I didn't need people bypassing it or just telling me to think more positively. I just needed the reminder that it was okay to sit with that pain that I'd ignored. It was okay to address those emotions that I didn't really know how to be with yet, that it was part of the process to feel tired. It was part of the process to feel like I didn't have the energy for things that I used to. It was part of the process to feel disillusioned, and that was all just okay. And it was okay to take the time to go through that. And it was okay to take the time to listen to my body and understand all of the things that it was communicating with me, that I'd ignored or didn't understand in order to be able to then use that information to build the reality that I wanted. Because you will not create the shifts without going through that process, without going through the process of deep, deep listening and understanding of, oh, these are the body's cues, or this is the information, or these are the insights that I needed, or this is what my body was trying to communicate, or energy within me was trying to communicate that I didn't know how to translate, but now I do. I can now create a reality where all of those parts of me are understood, all of those parts of me are cared for, and my health, my vitality, my needs are now met inside of that new reality. So that's what we're doing. So there is a deep listening process required. There is an emotional literacy process required. There is an self-attunement process required inside of that transformation. Not just shifting your beliefs or raising your frequency. It's deep attunement to those things. And what was once really painful, you can now utilize, and alchemize into something that becomes more positive or a different frequency. Something that was really sad or hurtful or painful, you can now alchemize that into something that serves you at a far greater level. And this is what we're talking about when we talk about raising your frequency. It's taking the shadow and utilizing it and transforming it, not bypassing it. And so to close out this episode, I really hope that this has helped you create a more tangible understanding of identity shifting or energetic shifting. But not only that, deeper compassion and love for yourself inside of that process, especially when you're in the lonelier stages, especially when you're in the stages where you feel more isolated or like you're really going against the grain of the systems that you were, or the structures or the community that you were born into, and you're creating an identity and a reality that is deeply true and nourishing for you, that is just going to feel like you're the caterpillar becoming the butterfly, and it's just going to feel like it's going to feel hard. The old patterns, once you were that person where you're actually repulsed by the old patterns and you've gotten to that point where you are done with them and you cannot continue, that new timeline has started. If you have set an intention and that has been your soul's guidance, and your soul has set a new intention for this reality to come through, and that just keeps feeding itself, you are just going to go through that process, and you're going to keep reaffirming the possibility of what is out there for you and what is available for you. You're going to keep realigning with the new beliefs because you're going to be so nauseated by the old ones. You're going to be so nauseated by the old actions. And that done enough on repetition is what creates those shifts. And when you're in the thick of it, that can feel really slow and really dense. And then what can feel like the biggest shifts and the biggest like quantum leap or timeline shift is when you start to get towards the end of certain patterns or resolving certain things. That's when it feels like it kind of speeds up. You get that anticipation that something's happening, and you really have more space in your body to take bigger actions or actually start really getting some momentum. And that's where it feels like it really starts clicking into place. But I never, ever want that to discount the process of going through the muck and the process of the hard stuff that feels like you may be treading water. And that's what I really wanted to bring home today. So thank you for being here, and I will see you next week.